Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include C3AI. C3AI software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable problems. C3AI. This is Enterprise AI.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. The movie Moonlight, which won the Oscar for Best Picture in 2017, was adapted from a script by my guest, Terrell Alvin McCraney. He and the film's director, Barry Jenkins, won an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. McCraney is now the creator of the series David Makes Man, where he's also an executive producer and writer. It's in its second season on OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network. Like Moonlight, it begins with a boy growing up in the projects in a Miami neighborhood who's neglected by his crack-addicted mother, which echoes McCraney's childhood. But in David Makes Man, the mother is able to get clean and stay sober. David is very smart and is one of 2 black students in the gifted and talented class at his magnet school. He manages to get into prep school, where he's again one of the few black students, and he's surrounded by students from families with money. The code switching required going back and forth from the projects to school is confusing and complicated. In season 2, we fast forward to David as an adult. He's become a successful businessman and is doing the marketing for a developer with political aspirations who's trying to revitalize the neighborhood where David grew up. But some people see David as just the black face for a development company trying to get zoning permission to tear down the projects, build a shopping mall, and gentrify the neighborhood with no concerns about displacing the people who live there. Meanwhile, David is still haunted by the shame and trauma of his childhood. Terrell Alvin McCraney is a graduate of what is now called the David Geffen School of Drama at Yale, where he now chairs the playwriting program. When he was a student at the Yale School of Drama, he became August Wilson's assistant. In 2013, McCraney won a MacArthur Fellowship, aka the Genius Award. Terrell Alvin McCraney, welcome back to Fresh Air. It's a pleasure to have you back on our show. The last time we spoke, Moonlight had just been released, and the film since won 3 Oscars, including yours for Best Adapted Screenplay. How has your life changed since then?
First of all, thanks for having me back. It was lovely speaking to you then, and I've since become a fan, so thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.
You know, it's really interesting. After the Academy Awards, you know, a lot of opportunities sort of showed up at my doorstep, and I kind of, didn't take a lot of them. Well, to this moment, I don't fully know. I do know some of it had to do with just growing up, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Growing up anticipating, the bear around the corner, as some specialists will say. You grow up with a lot of trauma, you grow up with a lot of disappointment and not feeling protected. You kind of think, oh, well, when this good thing happens, it's only it's in service of this really bad thing that's about to come. And so I wasn't really spending a lot of time just feeling great about the accomplishment. My best friend will tell you, Glenn Davis, who actually was just named artistic director at Steppenwolf recently, is was with me the night at the Academy Awards, and of course, we've been best friends for 20 years, so I wanted him with me everywhere. And we get to the governor's ball and the Vanity Fair party, and I'm like, I must have been there for 15 to 20 minutes before I just was like, I gotta go home. And I left the Vanity Fair party with all these, amazing things happening and stories to tell, but I couldn't, there was just nothing, I wasn't feeling excited, I was feeling scared and nervous and out of place, and yeah.
This reminds me so much of David, and David Makes Man, in the sense that, he's very different from you, but he, like you, seems haunted by the trauma of the past, and is having, difficulty getting past that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that, as a young person, when you grow up in neighborhoods like that in Homestead or in Miami or in New York, everybody's like, oh, you got to get out of this life, you got to get out of where you grow up from. And that's so instilled in your mind that by the time you turn around, you don't even realize that all of your aspirations are to get away from the place that made you or helped guide you into the person you are. And And if you're running on that autopilot, you turn around and you don't even know that you're part of, decimating an entire culture and experience that was there. And so that, to me, was so important to engage that, because that's exactly how I felt. I felt like, right after we made Moonlight, the projects that we shot it in, that Barry and I grew up in and around, are no longer there.
Oh, so they've been torn down to create a more gentrified neighborhood?
They are what they call a multi-use facility now. So they have, mixed housing with some affordable housing, some market price, but all of and that was one of the oldest projects in the country. It was built in 1926, and certainly the largest. And we filmed this movie here, and then all of a sudden, it became really important for the county and everybody to redevelop that neighborhood. And it felt like, wait, whoa, did we, by shining a light on this, did we do something? And of course we didn't. At the same time, the intentional, my next thought was, well, I need to make sure I preserve all the culture around here as much as possible, all the life that was here and is still here, as much as possible.
I was reading that there's something now called climate gentrification in Liberty City, where you grew up and where David Makes Man was shot, and also where Moonlight was shot. That's in an elevated area, and with all the storms and the flooding in South Florida, an elevated area is safer from climate change, and that's one of the reasons why Liberty City has been gentrified.
Well, realtors will deny it. They'll say, no, these areas just have good zoning laws or rights. And I was like, well, they've had those same zoning permits and strictures for years. My grandparents have been there since 1954. So, my father's lived there all his life. I lived there for 20 years of my life. There certainly those zoning laws haven't changed. And the ways in which you can build a house there hasn't shifted. What has? And it absolutely is what we call king tide flooding. Where there's a full moon and the sea comes up through the street in places like South Beach, and it's just there even without the rain. And then compound that with the rain and a full moon, right? That kind of flooding is almost impossible for those neighborhoods that are close to the ocean and to the bay to combat. So yeah, this slow quote unquote creep towards the elevated areas that are 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet above sea level. People have been talking about it for years, and people have been talking about it in Liberty City for years, but it's only now starting to make national headlines.
One of the similarities between you and your character David is, like we said, the trauma. David's mother was crack addicted. She gets sober in the series, and is really a kind of changed person. But for you, your mother never made it to that. And she died of complications from AIDS. And how old were you when she died?
22. There's actually two differences. I mean, my mother had a crack addiction, but also suffered from severe depression and undiagnosed, and was rarely offered any access or resources to that. I think David isn't addicted to a substance, but has a kind of addiction to this chaos, because that's all he knows. And so when he's triggered, right, he goes into this kind of fugue state where he's just really, he uses all of his passion, all of his imagination to make these really big, dangerous decisions. And that was really important to me, because I do that more than I've not been, I don't think I have a substance abuse. I don't really drink. But I sometimes will throw myself into these really scary situations and powerfully chaotic situations in order to make my life feel like it's normal.
Wait, can I stop you there?
Sure.
Can you give us an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, all of a sudden I need to run a playwriting program and write, a television show and You know, for example, I remember one time I was flying back and forth from Miami to New York to LA, you know, every 2 days in order to work. And that might sound great, right? People are like, oh, that's amazing. That's an amazing life to lead. But I was getting sick all the time. My anxiety was really high. I wasn't eating very well. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was just throwing myself at the work. And so in a capitalist society, we think, oh, that's normal. That's what you do. Until you realize that I'm not enjoying anything. People are like, well, what do you do for fun? I'm like, what do you mean? what are you talking about? Like, why are you skipping out on the Vanity Fair party with Halle Berry? And like, you know, there are people there that I've just loved in my entire life. And then you compound that with like just, you know, not just, but American racism. So I've got to deal with the microaggressions and the sort of surveillance society we live in consistently, constantly, while I'm also combating my own frustrations about not being, you know, this flight's delayed, so now I'm frustrated and I can't act frustrated because if I act frustrated, I'm probably going to get shot 5 times in the back, right, or put on a no-fly list. So I got to be calm about that. And so I'm stuffing down all of who I am, not enjoying anything, not sustaining relationships, not contacting friends, not anything, in order to do these amazing things that make me feel like my life is normal.
Was it also about giving you a sense of like a positive identity? Like, I've achieved this. I'm not just my past. I'm not just like the trauma-stricken child. I have these achievements. I have these awards.
Yes and no. I mean, I think the part that's absolutely right that I will underline is it gives me a sense of worth, right? I am because often I was told that I'm not worth much, right? I'm black, I'm queer, I'm in this world, my body has been attacked, my person has been attacked, all the things that come natural to me, the way I walk, the way I speak, have been told that they were worthless or less than. And that comes from, you know, societal femophobia, anti-blackness, you name it, right? And so because I was told that for so long, I have to do these things that are beautiful. I have to make these things that are amazing. I have to make these things that are compelling and touching and, you know, and the awards are great and good, but you know, you start to learn that those are never enough, right? People telling you that you're great and good, they're never enough. You still keep chasing. I gotta make another thing. I gotta make something more beautiful, more touching, more human. There was a time that I started with a therapist, and she was like, look, I can't technically make you do anything, but if you keep doing this, I do have the ability to write to your employers and say like, hey, I don't think this person should be working right now, and I just think you should know that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's if she's willing to go that far, I need to take stock, because I'm clearly not looking at how ragged I'm running myself.
Did you just stop, or did you just like cut back a little bit?
I just stopped a couple times. I just stopped. I kind of just like,
But did that mean telling people like, sorry, I'm not going to meet the deadline. Sorry, you're not going to have the play that I promised I was going to write.
Yeah, lots of that. Or I would just finish everything and go, nope, don't ask me for anything else. Or I can't do this anymore. Or setting deadlines of like, yo, I'm not. That's, you know, this is it. I'm not interested in.